Alright guys, hey, welcome back to the channel. I figured I'd kick this video off with the 5 W's. So your who, your what, your when, your where, and your why. Let's start with the who. So who is this for? This is for your off-grid, off-road, overlanding community. Specifically in this case, we're going to be talking about 4Runner owners, but in a lot of ways this stuff can be applied to any off-road vehicle of your choice. Let's talk about the what. So what is this? So this whole system is a off-grid solar power solution. So it's going to give you access to power without the need necessarily of your alternator or some other shore power source. As far as the what goes, let's talk about the components here. So we've got, let's start with the heart of the system. The heart of the system is your lithium battery. So in this case, I've chosen a 100 amp hour 12 volt lithium battery by Lion Energy. I chose this because I've used them in the past, they make great parts. Not sponsored for any of this, by the way. But in this one in particular fits within this box, which we'll talk about in a second. Moving on to the DC to DC charger. So this product is by Renogy. It's a 50 amp DC to DC MPPT solar charger. So what this does is it'll take the energy from your alternator and send it to your battery as a charging source. It'll also take the energy from your solar panel and send it to your battery as another charging source. Really cool piece of kit. Next thing we'll talk about here is your inverter. So this is where what the inverter does is it takes your DC energy and converts it to AC energy. So you can plug in your off-grid refrigerators, your coolers, your tools, and any other electronic that you have. So this is a pure sine wave 1200 watts. So pure sine wave means it's very efficient. You're not going to be losing a lot of energy as it converts it. And it's 1200 watts. So 1200 watts is a lot. I would say that the 1200 watts is going to cover 95% of anything that you would need, probably closer to 100. Next thing we'll talk about is the solar panel. So again, another product by Renogy. This one is a 100 watt monocrystalline flexible panel. I chose the flexible panel because I wasn't sure where I was going to install this. With a flexible one, you could mount it on top of, like, say, a rooftop tent if it had some curvature. In this case, I'm going to be mounting it directly to the rack. The monocrystalline part of it, that's the newest tech. It's the most efficient. You're going to get the most power per square inch out of it. Next thing we'll talk about here is the wiring, guys. So I chose 25-foot lengths of 4 AWG welding cable. And the size of your cable is going to be dependent upon how much power you're transmitting through your system. I highly recommend you go online and look at wire sizing guides based on your voltage and wattage uses. If you don't want to do all that, you can just follow along with me. 4 AWG is the right choice. Next thing we'll talk about is the terminal ends. So you can order these again off Amazon. I got them in a bunch of different sizes to include 4 AWG. With that comes the heat shrinks to keep everything clean and tidy and make sure those things are really secure. Next thing is we'll talk briefly about tools. There's not a lot of tools that are very special in this case, except for one, which is the crimper. Highly recommend you guys invest in a crimper. It's going to keep your terminal ends very secure to your wire. We got a drill for a couple holes that we'll have to drill potentially, and we've got a socket set for a couple bolts we'll need to loosen. Also cable ties. So cable ties are going to come in handy in a variety of ways. It's going to keep our wiring nice and tight and secure and clean. Also, I may use it to mount some of these components, and we'll kind of get to that point once we get to the video. We've got some cable tie snips, and then sort of the last but not least, sort of the star of the show here is this box. So I'm going to dedicate a whole video to this box, guys, so you're going to know exactly how I made this in case you want to do it yourself. But basically I recognize that in the 4Runner platform there's not a good place to put some of these components. And so I created something that takes advantage of the wheel well area. So the area around a wheel well is often not very well utilized. This takes perfect advantage of it. So this is where I'm going to be housing the majority of my components. All right, so that covers the what. So let's talk about the when. So obviously we're going to be doing this install now. through the course of this video, but for you out there watching, I would recommend doing this anytime that you're getting into the overlanding sort of community. You're gonna be doing multi-day trips. Another thing that for me specifically, I live in California, there's a lot of rolling blackouts, and on multiple occasions with other vehicles, I've powered critical components within my house with this system. So the wear. So all of these components are going to be installed inside the 5th gen 4Runner platform, and I'll send you guys quickly to a brief overview of where all these components are going to end up, and then the why. So why am I doing this? Couple reasons. First of all, I like to do a lot of long range trips. Again, as I'll mention again. I have a lot of components to bring along, like the cooler, your refrigerators. If you don't have a system like this, you're going to be tapping into your starter battery, and it's really easy to drain those down, especially with lead acid. So with the advent of lithium batteries, it's a much better and safer way to power your stuff. You can discharge lithium batteries basically to zero with no damage to the battery. It gives you a lot more power per sort of volume area as compared to a lead acid. Additionally, there's a lot of great storage systems out there, including like truckvault and Goose gear. Great products, very expensive, and none of them really utilize the wheel well area. So that's what I'm going to be doing with this. That's another reason why I'm making this video. So I think that covers kind of the basics of the 5 W's. So I think now we'll transition into the install. Stay tuned, guys.
All right, guys, step 1 complete. We got the DC to DC charger mounted. It is in fact secure. I've done this in the past with others in off-road situations, and it holds fine. One thing that we'll do since we're here is we'll remove the screws on the plates here, and then we'll expose the terminal. So what we aren't going to do is we are not going to connect this to power yet. We want this whole system depowered until we're done installing. But what we will do is we'll install the provided thermometer into the BTS port. The thermometer helps this thing run most efficiently. There's a couple other things that come with this thing. One is an ignition signal wire and also a battery voltage sensor. Both of those are not going to be needed for this. The ignition signal wire is only if you have a smart alternator, which I don't. And the voltage sensor is if you're doing long runs, which we won't be doing in this case. All right, guys, next step in this process, we'll move to the back of the 4Runner. The first thing that we'll need to do is we'll need to come in here and take out this D-ring. That D-ring is going to end up being one of the main mounting points for the box. So let's do that. First step is we'll come in with the flathead and we'll pry up this little plastic piece. There'll be a little recess here. So there, I'll point it out. There'll be a little recess there that you can get your flathead underneath. You just pry that up. It's a little snap like everything else on a Toyota. Take that away. Then we'll come in with our 10mm socket. I've already loosened this, not to waste your guys' time. So I can get just my hand, unscrew that, take out your socket, take out the whole housing, and you can see that this leaves us with a little area to bolt our box into. Alright guys, while we're here, I'll just quickly show you how to do a terminal in connection, and this will be useful for the rest of the install. What you'll need is you'll need your crimper, a lighter, an X-Acto knife, your wire, and your terminal in this case the ones included by Renogy. And there you go, all done. Secure, fixed, nice and tidy. Now we'll put together the wire that goes from the starter battery to the DC to DC charger, complete with an 80 amp inline breaker. And there it is, complete. This same process will be used for the other 2 breakers in the system. This little breaker system is really nice because it allows you to cut power to the components. In the case that you need to move components around or work on your system, it makes it more safe. Now we're kind of getting to the tedious part of the install, which is the wiring run. So as you guys can see, we're on the passenger side of the vehicle at the firewall. And what you'll notice is down here, there is a grommet where all the other wiring passes through. I pushed the wire through from the engine side. That was the easiest case for me. So let me show you where it comes out on the other end. So now we're on the inside of the truck on the passenger side floorboard area. So you can see I was able to push the majority of that wire through from the engine bay. So to access this part, what you'll want to do is, as you're working on this, very first thing is you want to take off this cowling underneath. And it's just like every other Toyota sort of part. It comes off with little snaps. Just be careful that you don't break them. So you can take this out and remove it. Yep. So you can see it passes through that grommet and comes right through. All right, so now we'll keep working on the run. Now that we got the terminal ends connected, we can start routing and cleaning up the wiring for this portion of the install. Let's get our wires across. One thing to keep in mind, guys, is I am connecting the terminals here, but this is on the output side, so this whole system's still not powered, so still safe. As you can see, the wires will, there's little channels for these wires to exit the plastic housing. One nice thing about this welding cable, guys, is how flexible it is. It's really easy to work with. It's all right to take your time here, guys. Just make sure you get it right. Not too tight, enough slack that you can change things later on, but still secure, so it's not going to be flopping around. You can use the existing attachment points. All right, now we can finish the wiring to and from the DC charger. Let's get started. We'll start with our ground here to there. And we've got our 60 amp inline breaker from the output of the DC to DC charger to your lithium battery. Make sure that stays off until we're done. And the positive input from the starter battery through the 80 amp breaker to the positive input. Positive lead from the solar panel. And the negative lead from the solar panel. And there you have it. This part of the install done. We'll move on to the inside and continue to route the wires. So just like I mentioned before, most Tacomas, all the trim is just held on by these snaps. Just be careful when you're prying, guys. It's really easy to break these things. So just take your time and pry them up. It should come free. One other little trick here, guys, is if you can see this little knob, if you're in a 4Runner, just take that out, and then that'll give you access to pulling this trim away, this trim here, and then you can route your wires underneath. All right, and there you have it, at least in this part. Routed underneath the pillar. It took a little bit of doing, but wasn't too bad. So now we're to the fun part, guys. This took a little bit of doing, but I figured it out, so just follow along. So what we'll start with is the weather stripping. So this weather stripping just pulls away really easily. It's just form fitted, it's not attached. And then what this will do is it'll open up a channel in between the trim and the sheet metal. So that'll be our initial path from down here and then up and through there. I'll take you to the other side. So this is the real tricky part, guys. So then you'll route it from there to here, and then this tray comes out. Now the tray doesn't just come out. It's got tabs and screws. So you guys can see that those holes there, those had screws in them. I think it's gonna be really easy to break this, so be careful. But what I did is I pried up the backside undoing the tabs, and then I was able to squeeze a screwdriver in there. Then once I got this out, you should be able to see now that you can see light through there, so you can route the cables that way. So then I'm gonna route the cables underneath the inverter, and then should be able to see down there that you can see light down there. And so I'll route it that way, and then over to here where we took the D-ring out earlier, and I'll take the cables through there, up through into the box, and it'll get me right to the battery. And just like that, guys, it's like we were never even there. We were able to do all that without drilling, so mission accomplished. All right, let's keep going. As you guys can see, this is sort of the magic of the 3D printing and 3D scanning process. The box slides right into the cavity. It fits so well that it almost doesn't even require mounting, but we will mount it anyways. First mounting location, as we saw, is right behind this panel. You can see these panels pop in and pop out really easily. So now we'll get to the mounting part. So I'll show you one method I'm going to use for this video, which is this piece here. So this is just a piece of plywood. I carved it with a Dremel tool to fit this recess here. Honestly, it took all of maybe 30 minutes to do that. So see, it fits in there. And then I'm also going to put some zip ties here and here to mount it. As you can see here, we got it all routed all the way up through the bottom of the box. Drilled a couple more holes into the mounting plate, and then I'm not sure if you can see it or not, but I added some heat shrink around right as they come through the holes, just for some added protection. All right, let's keep going. All right, guys, now we'll move on to the inverter install. So as I mentioned, the 1200 watt pure sine inverter by Giandel. And again, the reason why I chose this is because it fits into this cavity just perfectly by its dimensions. So well that it almost doesn't even need its own additional mounting. But I'll show you how I'm going to eventually mount this permanently so you guys can follow. So hopefully you guys can see right here and right there, there's places where you can put screws. So I would recommend doing self-tapping screws. Okay, and then the last step for this part of the install will be the battery. So let me show you how you can get it in there. Again, it fits almost like a glove. So it just slides right into this cavity. And then boom, right into place. All right, got the battery inside and terminals on the cables, so they're ready to be connected. Now let's get this inverter wired up. All connected and secure with breaker included. And as you guys can see here, all the components are within the box, safe and secure. Fits right in with the trim, can hardly even tell it's there. All within the confines of the box. Pretty cool solution. All right, now we'll move on to the solar panel. All right, guys, let's get that solar panel installed. Should be pretty easy in this case, I think. First things first, as you can see, I ended up installing it with zip ties at all of the little grommets along the edge, and I also tied down all the cables with zip ties as well. Originally, I was going to use these that were provided with the Prinsu rack, but as you can see, the panel is just like a 1/4 inch or so too wide, so it didn't end up working out, but zip ties work just fine. And so the last part of the solar panel install and the last part of the install really for the whole thing was running the solar leads. So let me show you how I did that. So I just ran them down the side of the windshield. You guys may or may not be able to see, but there's a molding. I think you may be able to fit those wires underneath the molding, but what I ended up doing is I just took a small nail and pushed the nail through the molding to make a little hole, and then ran a zip tie through there. Came out pretty clean, I think. You can't even really see it from much further than like 3 feet. And then the last piece is to get it into the engine bay. You just run it underneath this plastic piece here that just pops up really easily. All right, now we're done with all of the wiring and all of the component install. So now what we'll do is we'll power everything on. We'll flip on all those breakers and give it a test. All right, guys, looks like everything is working as it should. Solid red shows that the alternator is charging. Solid red on the solar panel shows that the solar panel is also charging in bulk mode. Solid green shows that the service battery is full. And solid blue shows that the house battery is of the lithium type. Last but not least, let's make sure that the inverter works. Boom, and shows voltage and wattage outputs. Let's give it one more test. And let's give this a shot. Look at that, turns on. We got AC power, guys. All right, guys, that does it for me on this episode of the 4Runner build series on Brigand Outdoors. As always, if you liked it, please subscribe, like, and comment down below. If there's anything that you guys saw that I did during this video that I should have done better, or if you have any thoughts, please leave me a comment. I learn from you guys just as much as you learn from me. And then stay tuned for how to get your own box if you want one. So I'm looking to have those available in Q1 or Q2 of 2022, and I'll leave information in the description to the link to the website. All right, guys, thanks again, and stay tuned for the next episode. See ya.